Welcome to Girl Choose Yourself, where we're trading self-doubt for self-trust and settling for soaring. I'm Emer Zone, your host, and together we're building the confidence to create lives so deliciously bold that they scare us a little, but in the best possible way. Because life's too precious to stay cozy in our comfort zones. It's time to choose ourselves for lives that are fabulous and soulfully fulfilling. So let's go. Hey, it's Emer, and welcome back to Girl Choose Yourself. And it's Labor Day weekend here in the US as I'm recording this. And it feels like a really beautiful moment to, reconnect gently, intentionally with you and with this space in the podcast sphere. So summer really, I think, has a way of shifting things. I was really intentional this summer, as I said in the episode before taking the break, that as my youngest daughter is now a senior, that was going to be this summer just gone, was like the last summer of having a school-aged child and a number of things going on for and with her that I wanted to really be present for. But during the summer, I think routines naturally, if you're a parent in particular, working parent, stay-at-home parent, hybrid working parent, the routines can soften and the structures kind of change up a little bit, don't they? They have to be a little bit flexible. And even in the very best way, I always feel, I think during the summer, the children's summer vacations more than anything, it's a little bit discombobulating, maybe at times, but it's a little bit disruptive in some ways and disorienting even. And so today, kind of as we return into this space, I want to begin with the conversation about something that I feel we don't talk enough about, and that's really important, which is how we care for our inner world. So it's an important form of self-care, and I think it's very easy to even obsess about the outside of ourselves and our bodies in particular as women. So much messaging from so many different sources about how we should look externally and how we should be representing ourselves to the world in that regard. But really caring for our inner world is what I want to talk about. We're not talking about being more productive or, anything performative, but care at the level of really the quality of our thoughts. And, that tone of attention, the energy that we are allowing to permeate ourselves and to really, well, I feel really influence us. And earlier this year, I think I'm pretty sure I mentioned it on an earlier episode of the podcast before the summer break, I talked about taking a 30-day sort of media diet, and it wasn't like a digital detox. I'm a girl who needs her K-drama, and if you don't know what that means, you're going to have to Google it because it's kind of embarrassing. So it was nothing extreme. It's not like I didn't touch any tech, but it was a really deliberate step back from this relentless scroll of the news cycle in particular. That's what it was about for me, and really the kind of online spaces that are just inhabited by a lot of emotional reactivity and clickbait and just all that is not us at our best as humans. And I really felt like I needed to be very intentional about what was going on for me there. And so within days of starting that, I really began to feel like on a nervous system level that I was, recalibrating, it was like it was down regulating and just feeling a lot calmer. I felt a lot clearer in my thoughts, so much less reactive, and my energy, sort of my life source energy, felt like it was returning. And my attention, the most precious thing I feel like I really have, felt like it belonged to me again. And I have used this term many times about the attention economy that we are living in and how we are really being, well, our attention is being hijacked for profit. So I felt like my attention really belonged to me again, and that felt really, really important. And then that was great. And I did my 30 days, and I wasn't very intentional about what was going to happen after that. I knew that I was feeling really good. And then summer was coming along and there was a lot going on. Travel with my daughter to Scotland. I ended up traveling back and forth twice because I didn't. She's she's 17. She's traveled, but she hadn't traveled independently out of the country. And I just thought, with politically the way things were, I did not want her to have a negative experience when she was coming through immigration or anything. And I said, to hell with it. I know it's a bit more expensive, but I'm going to accompany her there and back. And so I did that. And so there was a lot of disruption in my routine, as I say, during the summer. So as that came about and I ended my 30-day sort of news cycle, kind of stepping back from all of that, I kind of fell back. I kind of fell back into it. It was just like the travel, the kind of looser rhythms and routines, like the lack of the same structure. I just, without really realizing it, I kind of slipped back into old habits. And I was in the UK for quite a while. I was in Scotland. And so I'm going, oh, I wonder what's going on in Scotland. So I'm looking at the UK news. My home of origin is Ireland. So I'm a bit closer to Ireland. So I'm saying, oh, I wonder what's going on in Ireland. So I'm looking at that news and I'm going, oh, I wonder what's going on at home. Wouldn't like to leave the US out. So I'm looking at these three areas of news. So, the headlines just came flooding back in. The doom scrolling returned. And, the algorithm did what the algorithms do, which is kind of fed me a steady stream of despair and outrage. And it was exhausting. And while I care deeply, deeply about justice and truth, I cannot live and be well. My inner world cannot be calm. I cannot live from a place of powerful, calm intention when I'm, consuming a diet of emotional amplification. And it just leaves me feeling really exhausted and fragmented and somehow, here's the thing that it does. It leaves me feeling totally disconnected from what feels real and true and possible in my life. And so I've returned. I've returned again to curating with great intention what I'm allowing in. And I can already feel that shift. I'm just a much bloody nicer person to be around. Like, I went to law school years and years ago. I really care about justice. And I also am very susceptible to falling into a very argumentative kind of situation and, yeah, wanting to be right. And it's just really, really exhausting. So curating what I allow in is just really, really important to me. And now I feel this shift already because I was getting highly agitated by and triggered. And I'm also a 56-year-old woman. So I have like very few fucks left to give, and people can piss me off with nonsense. And that was just becoming way too easy to do. I mean, I take a lot of hormone replacement therapy. I look after myself very well. But I just felt like, whoa, this is not good for me or anybody who's around me. And And actually, also, that's another thing during the summer when I was kind of really out of my routine and things were a little bit less structured. I'd not taken a lot of medication that I was supposed to be for a number of medical issues that I have. And that was also something that I felt was kind of like the walls closing in a little bit on me there with physical maladies that I have, that I just wasn't looking after myself on that physical plane either. So now that I've begun again with this curation of what I'm allowing in, I really feel that shift towards really more clarity and calmness, really much more peaceful, more presence, more able to see the beauty in the everyday and the simple. And, I go out for a walk every morning now, and I feel a great sense of peace and appreciation for the simplest things in my life. And this kind of recentering brought me back to thinking about the work of a gentleman called Dr. Masaru Emoto. And probably absolutely destroy the pronunciation of that, but we'll move on. And you may have heard of him, right? It was like you'll come across YouTube videos about him if you Google that or look on YouTube. He's a Japanese researcher and he rose to prominence like 20 something years ago, early 2000s anyway, with a book that became like a global bestseller, and it was called The Hidden Messages in Water. Ringing a bell? So he did these experiments, right? So he placed water into small glass containers and exposed that water to different influences, like very positive or negative influences in terms of the spoken word, music, or even just written labels on the glass that held the water. And some of the phrases that might have been spoken were like, I love you, thank you, I'm grateful, or you disgust me, make me sick on the other kind of extreme of things. And he then froze the water and photographed the resulting crystals under a microscope. And so the water exposed to positive music and words and formed these symmetrical, intricate crystals, like tiny snowflakes, like really beautiful. Look online, you'll see these images. And then the water in the containers that had been exposed to messages and words of anger, hate, or harsh noise, well, those shapes were sort of chaotic and broken and fragmented. Now, this work has been widely criticized for lacking scientific rigor. And there were no like consistent control groups, and the methods weren't readily reproducible. And it's not accepted as scientific proof. And I'm not like presenting it here as such. It just made me think the fact that the book was so incredibly successful, maybe the crystals, etc., maybe all of the results are debatable, but the experience really isn't. It resonated with so many people. And I think that's because we sense beyond our natural senses. We know what it feels like, for example, to be around someone who calms us just by their presence. Like you can be in a room with somebody and you first of all, you feel safe, which immediately helps your nervous system. That's the beginning point. But you feel a warmth in their presence and a calmness and a sense of well-being. And we know what it feels like to be in a room full of agitation, even if somebody's not even speaking. So we're picking up things that we're not quite able to see or describe. And we're sensitive beings. We're sensitive beings. And when you think about water and, our makeup, there's so much water in us. And it makes me think that we're like porous. Things can permeate us that we don't see. We absorb the tone. If you ever felt like somebody said something to you and it just felt like it pierced you. And we do. We do. We hold on to language and replay it endlessly in spirals. Even if it was never meant for us, we imagine ourselves mind readers and we repeat and carry these things. We carry like the emotional weather, the emotional climate of the spaces that we're moving through. And Emoto's ideas were later tested more formally by a psychologist whose name is Dean Radin. And he studies consciousness and human intention. And he ran a series of blind and double blind studies where people directed positive intention, so not speaking, towards water sealed in containers. And the frozen results were then judged by independent raters. And I'm not sure what these independent raters' qualifications were, but just it's interesting. I find this interesting. And the results were interesting, although obviously not conclusive. They didn't meet the highest thresholds of scientific reliability. Radin himself is often considered part of the more experimental fringe of psychology. So it's most definitely not hard science, but maybe that's not the point at all. Maybe the point is that I offer it here really just as an invitation to consider that we are affected, that the tone we live and we experience within matters, and that tending to the emotional landscape of our lives, is not indulgent or airy-fairy nonsense. I think it's really essential to our well-being and to the joy, that we can experience in our lives. And I don't know about you, but I want to have a joyful life. I don't want to just be getting by and, waiting for the weekend and hoping that things will get, a little bit better in certain areas of my life. I really want to live and claim a really joyful life, and to have that in me so that people who are around me will also feel that energy from me, even if I don't know you, that I don't speak to you, but that I'm physically around you, or even just around you through the airwaves of a podcast, or that there's just this energy that I want to be bringing to myself and for those who are around me or who are in my orbit in any way. And this brings me really to the heart of what we'll be exploring in the podcast and in other areas in the coming weeks. And when I talk about confidence, I'm talking about consciousness and about becoming more awake to how you feel, more attuned to what you're absorbing, more intentional with where your energy goes. Because that is the foundation of confidence. It's not just believing in yourself, it's becoming. It's becoming the kind of person you trust yourself to be. It's not proving yourself to any external audience. It's not fixing yourself because there's there's nothing wrong with you. I think this one took me a long time to realize that I was not a project that needed fixing. And it's really a journey into knowing, a deep, deep journey into knowing, like quietly, deeply, who you are. And from there, showing up from that place with real calm, presence, and clarity. It really is at the core. It's the essential for confidence, like real, genuine. Light up a room. You light it up from the inside out is that. So as we're returning, or I'm returning to routine and rhythm after the change up of how the summer months unfold, and maybe you are too, I want to leave you with this. What is the emotional tone of your inner world right now? And if you believed that tone was shaping how you experience your life, how you're experiencing your moments and your days, then how would you care for your inner world? How would you care for it? You will do exactly what you feel is right and true for you. I just want to offer you this. I found that 30-day diet of removing myself from the influences of the endless news cycle was hugely beneficial to me. And then when I slipped back, I felt things unraveling somewhat. And that's why I'm back in this place of really being intentional about what I'm allowing in. And I invite you maybe to consider doing something similar for yourself. It's a very noisy world, and it is very hard to tune in to our internal voice and that wisdom when our energy, our attention is so dispersed and dissipated in and hijacked by this attention economy. So maybe it's something you want to try for just 7 days if you've been feeling a bit untethered and fragmented and easily triggered, and that maybe even hopeless. The news cycle is really, really difficult. If you've been feeling anything that is impacting you in a negative way, maybe it, as an experiment, you'd like to try that just for 7 days and see how am I feeling? How am I feeling? So welcome back to the podcast. I'm very excited to be back after the break, and episodes will drop as normal on a Thursday. This is just a reintroduction episode for Labor Day weekend. And I hope you're having an amazing weekend and that you find beautiful, nurturing, nourishing ways in which to care for yourself, because you are extraordinary and you deserve everything. We'll see you soon. Thanks so much for tuning into the episode this week. I hope you got a lot out of it, and if you did, please share it with somebody who you feel would benefit, and leave a review. Always greatly appreciated. Lots of free and paid resources to take things a step further. You can find those in the show notes. And hey, if nobody's told you this yet today, you are amazing, and the world is a far more beautiful place because you're here with us all. Stay cool. Bye.